All right. So the first step, we want to draw up our roadways. I'll just assume I am going to work on the actual image itself, because working with the map, the aerial map, sometimes will actually slows the software. And since we're remotely working, let's try to speed things up and avoid problems with lags. So I'll uncheck or switch off the maps. On top of network editors, you'll have a lot of useful tools. They're really quick access tools. Edit background graphic parameters. You can check options of the map. You can change the intensity of different settings, display settings. We don't really use a lot of them all the time unless I want to show something different. So I'm not going to get into it. You can play with it on your own time, but I'll really show you what's really critical and important for your projects and in the future for your future uses too. Toggle wireframe selection or view. You can do that through Control A, and we'll do that quite a lot. It helps us with drawing links and connectors and how these overlap on top of each other. So we'll mainly use the shortcut for it, Control A. It's nice to memorize it. It will be really helpful. If you are lost and somehow you went too far away from your network and you want to get back to view the whole network, you can click View Whole Network. In this case, my network is really the background image, so it zoomed out to it. You can zoom in and out, and you can do that too with a scroll on your mice. You can, similar to a CAD file, you can just move things around instead of having the mouse. You can have different views, 3D, and that setting, I'll show it later once we get to actual simulation. It's really helpful for simulation purposes, but you can actually have a 3D simulation and watch it yourself and see how it works out through just a 2D, 3D switch here. So first of all, I'll check off the map. Now, so it is a little bit faster. I'll be in link mode, so left click links. Yeah, I want to draw a new link, so I'm going to hold Control, right click from point A to point B. You will get a new dialog box. Right now, I know that this is a 2-lane roadway, but at the intersection, it just pans out with auxiliary lanes and so on and so forth. But for now, I'm just going to have 2 lanes. You can name the, you can change the name. I don't really play with the link number most of the times, but it's nice if you want to have a neat network. Entering the name of the road does not really hurt. So this is really Country Hills Boulevard. So I'll put in Country Hills Boulevard. Link behavior, most of this is an urban network. It's not a freeway, so select urban. And you can select different link behaviors and switch between them. Thankfully, VISSIM latest versions do have the capacity to have different link behaviors per link. So you can change the behavior depending on the link. But for your purposes and needs, this is not really important. Just leave it at urban. Display type, if you want to change the colors, we'll just keep working with the gray displays for now. If you want to change colors, it's really easy, and I can show you how later. But let's focus on drawing 2 lanes for now. You can, as I mentioned, per lane, define the behavior, especially if you want 1 lane assigned for autonomous vehicles and the other is not. You can do that. Or 1 lane assigned to people with more than 2 people in their cars. You can do that through setting your own link behavior type and assigning it per lane. If you want to block certain vehicles from a certain lane, let's say you want to block heavy vehicles from using the left turn lane. If that's the law or rule or policy in your jurisdiction, you can do that and that specifically. You can also, especially at intersections, not allow lane changes. So lane changes left to the left in lane 1. Lane 1 is always the lane to the curb, or is the curb lane. Lane 2 is the middle lane or left lane, and so on and so forth. You can change the display type per lane, especially if you have, let's say, an HOV lane that you want to have a different color, you can do that. But again, we're not going through this. We have drawn 2 lanes. So your default view is right now, actually, because I'm in the toggle network wireframe that was showing. So yeah, make sure you're not in wireframe mode, because that really presents you every link as a really a wire, a blue wire for links, and for turns, which will be drawing as connectors, that will be shown as pink lines. But don't worry about that for now. Let's be in the normal mode. The link is distorted. We want to make sure it's representing the roadway, so you can move the beginning of the link. You can add spline points by control, right click. I've added a spline point here. You can add one here, here. So you can control the curvature of your roadway. Right now, I'm not going to draw the 4 lanes because I'm going to trick the software and cut the lane in certain areas, and then I'll increase the number of lanes. So let's just adjust the alignment, how things look like for now, and then start cutting that link later on. Yeah, this allows you to control how curvatures look like and so on and so forth. You can do it as smooth as you can, or you can do it rough. Usually we go for the VISSIM projects, really, we want to be as accurate as possible. So if I do something quickly here, do not do it quickly in your project, please do it properly. So right now, I have the link drawn. I know this section. Now, let's say I want to find out the number of lanes, but they are not very clear because of the link that I drew over them. You can either toggle the wireframe, and it will show you the link in almost a hidden mode or as a wireframe itself. Or you can also do the same thing with hitting Control A. So I'm just now hitting Control A again, and I'm getting the wireframe mode again, or view. So right here, I'll cut or split the link by right-clicking at the link, and I'll ask VISSIM to split the link here. And it's telling me the old link had this length, it's being split at this point, and the new link and their links. I don't really need that information much, I'll just press OK. If you zoom in, you'll find that the connection is in pink. And what's in pink is called a connector. A connector is any link that, or any segment that connects between 2 links. The connectors are important because they are points where you can influence driver decision. Like at this connector, if I double click this connector, I can make sure to ask vehicles in lane change or under lane change to start changing the lanes to be in the appropriate lane, and let's say 500 meters away from this point. This is extremely important at intersections and actually in troubleshooting how your network behavior is. So I'll go actually over the link options so you guys are aware. What we're going to use is the tab that's called lanes. We're not going to use MISO, pedestrian area, display, or dynamic assignment. This is for other purposes. If you want to change the display, this is really if you want to do 3D modeling. You can actually model things in 3D and raise the links. If you have a bridge that goes goes over a roadway, or there's an underpass and so on and so forth, you can play with that through adding offsets, what the height is, for how long it extends, and what's the thickness of the roadway, especially if you want to present it graphically. But again, we're not going to get into that. So what we're only using in lanes is just the lanes tab, or in links is the lanes tab. Under connectors, for your purposes to troubleshoot a network. And by the way, to be opening this dialog box, all I'm doing is either double clicking, or you can also right click and click edit. And you can get to the same dialog box to edit. You will find that connectors are always starting with the names of 10,000s and above, and links will start from 1 and so on and so forth. That's how VISSIM naming convention is. But it's up to you if you want to change it. VISSIM is a very flexible software. What we're going to use from connectors primarily is, of course, in your settings, in your projects, if you want to block a certain vehicle from a certain lane, that may be the case, depending on your project. But more importantly as well, the value of when do you want to start having vehicles do the lane changes so they are in the appropriate lane from this specific point. for now, we'll leave it as the default. Most of the time, default works, but you're starting to see weird lane changes in the proximity of the intersection. Editing this field is sometimes helpful. In this area, I know the software has roughly about 3 lanes in this area, so I'm going to do the same thing, split link. And I'll double click, double left click, change the number of lanes to 3. Of course, what happened here, my connectors got screwed, but we'll be fixing them up shortly. The last bit is really the bit that has the 4 lanes. So increase that to 4. And look at your network. So you have the correct number of lanes. I'm sorry, who's speaking? Guys, if you are not on mute and you don't have a question, please mute yourself, or I'll have to mute you. Thanks, guys. So I'll go back to my connectors, double click, I'll change that to 3. So 3 lanes connect to 3 lanes. So connectors connect between link 1 and link 2, and they connect between 3 different lanes. You can select which lanes they connect to easily. And you can edit that graphically too. So what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to, if you want to delete a spline, you can actually move the older or the end spline on top of it, and that removes the older spline point. So I'm going to increase that to actually something that is a bit proper. And this should be shifted a little bit up. And I'll be doing the same thing right here. Okay. So what I've now done is really I've allowed vehicles. So you see that I've left a dead space. This space is really not in reality being used because vehicles, when they do a lane change, they'll be coming all the way to here. So that simulates more or less the progression of how this lane should be. Actually, for this one to be a little bit more proper, we would actually pull this up a little bit here. And it's always nice, as much as possible, to shorten as much as possible the length of your connectors. If I can press Control A, try to make sure your connectors are smallest length possible, because in bigger networks, what you end up having is the more connectors you have, the more time VISSIM needs to process information, because the again, connectors are points where drivers and vehicles make decisions. Increasing them requires more computational capacity. So if I zoom out, this approach looks proper. So vehicles will come in, there is a dead space if they want to join the lanes, there's a dead space if you want to join the lanes here. Maybe this can be adjusted. You can spend your own time fixing the length or adjusting the length, but we're not going to really waste our time on that small component right now. If I hit Control A, I'm drawing things to where the stop line should be, so that should be good. Right here, I have a right turn that I did not assign. One thing is you can either draw it with actually adding a receiving link here, similar to the one I'm adding now. And this is a 2-lane road, so reduce the length to the proper number of lanes. If you hold Control and right click, you can draw a connector between 2 links. And you really need the one connector, so the 1 lane, because you're really drawing 1 lane. And you can click A OK. If you control A, you will, of course, notice that this has a pink line, so that's a connector. VISSIM identifies connectors as link on its own. If you're drawing something that connects between two links, it's a connector. If you're drawing something from scratch that doesn't connect to anything, that's a link. Similar to how we adjusted links, you can draw, apologies for that, you can make sure it's selected, control, right-click, you can get spline points. But there is an easier way to do it. When you're drawing the connector, when you get the dialog box, and I'll get that again by double left clicking, you can actually do spline, and let's say I want to have 12 points. Unfortunately, you cannot do this with links. This is only for connectors. And VISSIM will try to understand what you're trying to do. So you'll have to adjust it manually, unfortunately, in this example. And especially if you want to connect it all the way. But in this specific example, this is not the more preferable way of doing it. This is the way I would do it if you're, for example, having a tight right turn at an urban intersection and you're drawing the right turn from here to here. But in this specific example, you can see this is a rule, almost a high-speed setting. The width of this lane is almost probably 5 or 6 meters. And unfortunately, you cannot control lane width in connectors, but you can control it in links. So what I'm going to do is to delete this connector. I will draw my own lane, in fact. And I'll draw it all the way here. It can be annoying to keep doing the spline points every now and then, but if you want to do something proper, you want to do it proper. So I increase the length here to 6 meters. And it did change for me. Let's hope that this is the appropriate length for this. Yep, that's the correct width. And you can add your own, make sure it's selected, and then you can keep adding spline points and moving them around. So this is mainly because I want to maintain the actual correct width of the roadway. And we'll keep it like this. Now let's connect between this guy, the link, and this link. Now you would get a good connector. And when you're drawing connectors again, if you've got the dialog box, you have zero control of your width. What VISSIM does, it takes an average and starts extrapolating between the beginning. So that's a length or a width that is similar to the lanes, in this case 3.5 or 3.7, 3.5 in the specific case, to a 6 meter. So the connector at the very end becomes a 6 meter connector. If we do control A again, this is our drawing. It's not smooth, unfortunately, but it's really your job and your promise to make things as smooth as possible and reflecting real world conditions. So this is one way to draw this approach. In this specific way, we did not allow, well, we just allowed vehicles to freely use any point in the lane to get into the left lanes. Let's say if I control A and I notice that here there are white lines. So starting from this point, because I'm not supposed to make lane changes, I can come in here, split link here, click OK, and the most 2 lanes. Every time, by the way, you get confused which lane is which. Typically 1 is the curb lane, 4 is the outer lanes. So right here, I'm going to say no lane change left or right. If you click Control A again, you'll see a solid line that was drawn out for you. But we want to draw another one here too, because we don't want the through traffic to merge into left turning traffic at in this area of the intersection, just to make things neat. I'll do this again here. I think that fixes that. And if you want to prohibit the left from joining the right or the through lanes, you can as well do this here. And click OK. If you want to see the full name, just hover on top of it to tell you no change left as the first checkbox set, and the second checkbox set is really no change right. And you can do it per lane. Click OK. Click outside. You'll see your solid lines are performed here, matching what's actually at site when you press Control A. So, any questions so far? Okay. So, as I mentioned, this is one way to code this approach. But let's assume I'm designing and I want to make sure that my queue is being accommodated within the signal cycle length. You can code your left turns separately. And what I would do in this case really is the lanes become or are opening up from here. You can actually force traffic to, so I'll change this to, let's remove the third lane with the third lane. So I'm changing this to 2 lanes. And right here, that should be fine. I'll just shift it a little bit here. Shift this guy a little bit here. Reduce the width of the connector. Let's say I want to make design for queuing, and I want to force my vehicles to always use the most left lanes to as early as they can, so you can make sure your signal can dissipate the queue. Typically, this is most preferable, specifically if you're really trying to make sure everything can be accommodated within your signals. So try to force in your traffic to use their specific actual lanes. I'll actually, I have this as 3. So at this link, make sure, of course, your connectors are as closely to the edge as possible. And this is really for the purpose of conflicts, and you'll be able to see that when we get to conflicts. I'll draw a connector from the end of this lane to the end of this lane. And that's lane 3 to lane 3, or lane 2 to lane 3. So click OK. So we've got a new connector. Anyone wanting to go through will have to travel on top of this connector. Anyone trying to go left will have to be forced through this little connector. Now again, I'll increase this actually back to 3 to 3, so things are a bit neat. And do the same thing. I'll push this, so I actually get the right queuing information. Increase the length, probably here. Update the connector again. And draw another. To be honest, it's not, I'm sorry, this is, I'll undo this actually. Because in this case, if you recall, traffic will be already in their appropriate lane, and the appropriate lane is going to happen from the 2 most left turn storage lanes. And in that case, having that extra bit of dead space does not hurt, because that's what actually vehicles will use to get into the right lanes. So I'll keep it that way. This is important because when you're drawing your vehicle routes from point to point, you will force that specific route to enter that connector. I'll stop it here, but we'll get to how to draw the routes very soon. But for now, any questions? Okay. You can absolutely complete this example from all directions. For the sake of time, I do have a prepared example with the actual coded network fully. Of course, what I'm going to do is I'll override this network. I'm not going to save it. So if you want to open a file quickly, you can very simply drag your INPX file to the network editor. I don't want to save changes because I'll override this file with this completed example, so no. And moment, I'm not sure if this file does have a background setup in it. If you want to show if there are background images, you can show in list, right click and show in list. And this file does not have any, but that's fine. If we ever need a map, we can easily display the actual Bing map. So this is how really a complete example would look like. You have already this file in your network or in your resources, so you can please feel free to view it. The one thing that we did not actually do is drawing pedestrian links just for the crosswalks, and that one is really simple. I'm going to remove a couple and we'll be drawing them ourselves. So I'll delete the sidewalk and the sidewalk and go again to links. You are drawing network elements, links, roadways, and that roadway is really for pedestrians. I'm going to draw one link here. Typically, pedestrian crosswalks are about 3 meters in width. So I'm going to draw 2 directions, one with 1.5, another with another 1.5. So width here is 1.5 meters. So it updated that for me. And you can, of course, split the link here if you want to make sure you're representing the actual and actual geometry. And then one easy way to draw the opposite side. This actually looks like a 4-meter crosswalk. So I'm just going to update this to 2 meters per direction and do the other one too. If you want to draw the opposite direction, very easily right click and go to generate opposite direction. It will generate a link with the similar characteristics, but in the other direction. How many lanes? Just the one. It did that for me here. I'll do this again here and generate opposite direction. And you've got your other one. Of course, the other one did not connect because we've just generated the other direction quickly. So we'll just very quickly, briefly connect them with a connector and hit OK. So this is how we can, this is the way we would actually trick VISSIM. If you don't have a VisWalk license, this is how we trick VISSIM to code pedestrians by drawing smaller width links. The other, if you want to really properly do pedestrian links, you would really, through VisWalk, you would draw a normal link that's actually 4 meters. And change it to footpath. This is just a display thing. You can change it to pedestrian gray area. The color is really the same, but this is helpful if you want to sort things based on their graphical aspects. So being neat is really good, especially if you're trying to extract results from a very big database in an Excel spreadsheet. You can look up all links that have classification 21, and then you can easily pull the results from them.